Graham McVeigh with Remote CryptoCom. We've got Meltem Demirors here. How's it going, Meltem?
It's going well. Oh, hold on. I'm getting a water delivery. Thank you.
Oh, that's good. I deliver my wife lunch every day at work, and and she's always like, "Get out of here! This isn't hot enough," just to be funny in front of her team. So no worries. Cool. Well, I'm going to leave that in because it's fun. But Meltem, you're awesome. You're sort of a big deal as far as I'm concerned. You've been in the space for a really long time. How has crypto
Well,
either?
hold on. I want to caveat really long time because this space is like 7, 8 years old. I've been in it for a long time, relatively speaking, but comparatively speaking, there are people who've had 40-year careers on Wall Street. So I don't want to get too ahead of ourselves. Like, I hope to have a storied career in this industry, but comparatively speaking, I feel like a baby. So.
Okay, very good. Okay. So as a baby, what is it when you, at this point in its life cycle, how has crypto either surpassed or fallen short of expectations you may have had for
Yeah, so I got interested in Bitcoin in 2013. That's kind of when I went down the proverbial rabbit hole. And I think it's always so fun to talk to people about how they went down the crypto rabbit hole. It's kind of like the moment you discovered Jesus, if I'm allowed to say that, not to dismiss religion, but like it's this moment where suddenly the light bulb goes on. And it's different for everyone. It starts at a different place for everyone. But I love hearing those stories. So for me, it was really for the first time understanding the relationship between money and state and how profound it was, number one, to sort of decouple money and state, and just like we've been trying to decouple state and church for a long time and have done that with limited degrees of success. For me, really that aha moment and what got me really excited about Bitcoin was this revelation that A, you could have money that wasn't issued by the state. And then B, the idea that still captivates me in the narrative I think we're still working towards 7 years later, is this idea that you can build an open, permissionless financial network. And really Bitcoin to me in so many ways it's a telecommunication protocol, right? It's a set of rules for a system that allows us to communicate. And instead of relaying, messages about our well-being or funny memes, we're relaying messages about value or UTXO sets. And so I think there's this really beautiful, really profound thing that starts to happen when you think of money as a network, when you think of it as a way of communicating and expressing yourself. And to me, I think we're still in that stage where we're still so early in building the tools that allow people to have financial expression in this new way. And it's going to take a decade, maybe 2, maybe 3, maybe it won't happen within my lifetime. But I think that so many people, when they grasp the beauty of Bitcoin and what's possible with it, it's really powerful on so many different levels. So yeah, I feel like we're still in the early innings, and I'm just excited about people working on things that make Bitcoin more usable, make it more accessible. Right now, there's so much cool work happening around privacy, which I think is great. And when I say privacy, I mean the ability to obfuscate or sort of to hide your transactions to make it more difficult for people to identify real world data with Bitcoin network level data, right? So it's like someone tying your IP address to your house, someone can tie your wallet address to your identity and other identifying information about you, including your IP address potentially. So I think building all of these layers of tools that allow you to have more privacy, that allow you to transact more quickly and have instant off-chain settlement like what you can do with Lightning. There are all these cool little things that are getting built, and it's really just, it's fun and exciting because there's always something new going on.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that the Strike project, or Zap, I think it is one of those really cool, like, projects that has been neat to see on Bitcoin. You talked about privacy.
One example though, right? So if we look at the payment space, right, Zap's a great example. There's also Lightning Labs, which built Loop and a bunch of other great products. I'm a big user of Blue Wallet, which is a cool non-custodial wallet that you can use. I actually use it with Fold. I'm an investor in Fold, full disclosure, but you can use it to send Lightning transactions. So there's all of these cool apps and products that are getting built on the payment side. On the capital markets side, there's a new startup called LN Markets that's building an exchange basically on top of Lightning. They built a really simple swap contract. So you now have all these cool financial instruments being built on top of Lightning that have instant settlement and settlement finality. And then there's even cool stuff in the paid messaging space. So there's a really cool app called Sphinx that allows you to embed payments into messages. So it's kind of like a mix of a messaging server combined with a payment tool. So theoretically, I could charge my friends to talk to me, or I could pay them. More realistically, I could pay them. So there's.
I was going to interrupt, but you're my guest.
No, please, sorry.
So,
I just get, you know me. I get so excited. We've spent a lot of time together at Crypto Springs, which I work on with Elizabeth Stark from Lightning Labs. Like, you know how excited I am about Bitcoin. So I just.
Yes, no, I totally understand. But that's actually going to make me skip to like one of the last questions I had, which is, everyone in Bitcoin makes this argument that like, if somebody comes up with something that's really all that valuable, Bitcoin's going to absorb it. So do you think that Bitcoin is then absorbing DeFi, and do you think that's begun to happen?
That's an interesting framing. So the idea is that as cool things get created, Bitcoin's kind of like a sponge or like a blob, or it just absorbs that idea. Yeah. Oh, interesting. I don't know that I would really think of it that way. What I think a lot of people don't appreciate about Bitcoin, maybe actually I'll tell a story. Okay, so today I was checking out a cool new product that my friend, so most of my day actually, like between doing corporate stuff at CoinShares, I also run our venture strategy, and we have a little baby venture fund that we've just started deploying out of, and we're going to be talking more about our venture approach. But I spend a lot of time also talking to companies. It's something I've done for the last 6 years. Like I love it. I love meeting people, hearing what they're working on. So one of my friends, Shane, texted me today. He had initially built a prediction marketplace on top of Augur. Augur had all sorts of issues at a protocol level. It was very hard to build on top of. There wasn't a lot of liquidity. So he just built a new product on top of the Ethereum network. And it works, it's great. But the issue is when I place a $5 bet, right? So I think the bet I did is Trump gonna win the 2020 election? I'm not gonna tell anyone which way I voted, but I wanted to put on a $5 bet. I was like, great, why not? So log into my little MetaMask wallet, hit enter, and then the transaction screen pops up, and it's a $4 transaction fee for a $5 bet. Right, and we saw the same issue with CryptoKitties when they were popular. We see the same issue sometimes in Bitcoin, but I think a lot of people don't realize, like, consuming block space, right, costs money. Prioritizing your transaction costs money. And so what I think is really interesting is there are all of these different problems that people have raised with Bitcoin. And I'll just go into the two that I think come to mind most for me when I hear people talk about these issues. One is the scalability issue of Bitcoin. So, every time I hear 7 transactions per second, I want to jump out the window. It's like, okay. So the scalability limitations of Bitcoin, I think, are a point that's used often. So I want to talk about that. And then the other one that comes up consistently with Bitcoin is governance, right? So the fact that Bitcoin doesn't have defined on-chain or off-chain governance, a lot of people have built protocols like governance tokens or oriented solely around governance. And I think that's highly problematic for a variety of reasons. So it's like you have the scalability issue and then you have the governance issue. And so all these projects get built to try to address these issues. Oh, sorry. And the third one probably is flexibility, right? So flexibility of the language. And one of the things people say often, like, you can't do smart contracts on top of Bitcoin. Well, like, you can, but Bitcoin's not there yet, because the way that Bitcoin has historically oriented, like what Bitcoin wanted to do best was to be the most secure blockchain, right? And so I think in this regard, one of the important things that people need to understand, like security has a cost. I actually think this is something we as humans are just learning to appreciate, because we seem to need to learn the same lessons over and over again. But security has a cost. And in Bitcoin, you price that on transaction fees, right? So if you want to write data, if you want to send a message on the Bitcoin blockchain, you have to spend money. And if there's a lot of people who want to send messages on this network, it's going to cost you more money to send your message sooner than someone else's, right? So there's a prioritization question. It's a fee market basically for block space. And so I think one of the things that's interesting is all of these new projects, and this is a very long-winded way of answering your question, but all of these projects that have started and all of these new things that have emerged are effectively a response to like the perceived tyranny and the perceived issues with Bitcoin. But in reality, I think those aren't issues, they're actually features that provide the Bitcoin network with certain important characteristics. And so I think, again, like people in the space just have a very poor understanding of what Bitcoin is attempting to do and what other protocols are attempting to do. Like if you don't care about security, if you don't care about, immutability, go ahead and use another protocol. Like why even use a protocol at all? Like just use a managed database, right? So I think a lot of people have identified coordination problems that they're trying to solve with this technology that are actually coordination problems that cannot feasibly be solved by technology. And so what you end up doing is you end up creating the same problems, but in a different format. And so I think you're just trading off the problems you have in these different projects that, again, have been created as a response to this perceived tyranny in Bitcoin. Like, why is it this way? Why are blocks so slow? Why are blocks so small? Like, we keep going through these iterations. There's a reason the protocol operates this way. There's a reason, that development around the protocol has been slower than in other protocols. And I think that has material value. And I think it's one of the reasons that Bitcoin continues to be so dominant, because when it comes to moneyness, I think Bitcoin has some really unique properties that other projects don't. Now, that being said, like, this is about permissionless financial innovation. So if people want to make new protocols and like do DeFi stuff and go nuts. I think one of the beautiful things is like nobody's judged your execution. I have my views, and as you know, I share my views. But I'm wrong all the time, and who knows what's going to happen. But for right now, I think a lot of my attention is still on Bitcoin. There's lots of shiny toys out there, but I'm willing to be patient, and I'm willing to invest most of my time and energy into working on Bitcoin.
Very cool. Yeah. Something about coordination problems can neither be created nor destroyed like energy. I don't know. There's some sort of joke in it.
Wait, I'm going to steal that. It's Grant's law of coordination problems.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Yes. So this is a totally different sidebar, but I've been wanting to ask you about this since it happened, which is, how does it feel to have created a gigantic meme that money printer go burr? I mean, it's just insane how far that's gone.
First of all, I did not create that meme. I just amplified it, right?
Okay.
So, I don't know where the meme came from. Probably 4chan, honestly. Who knows? The depths of the internet. It's a great meme. But what I actually was writing about this this morning. What I think is so telling about this meme is the fact that for the first time, like a meme about monetary policy is really popular. Like it's a god tier meme. If we're talking about memes, like, it's a god tier meme, right?
Yeah.
But it's the first time, at least, that I'm aware of in the history of social media, that we've seen a meme about monetary policy. And what it's done is it's created this conversation within like this popular narrative that's strong through social media, through everything we consume on a daily basis about monetary policy. And if you would have asked me 6 months ago, like, do you think there will be a meme about monetary policy featuring Jay Powell, I would have been like, no, nobody thinks like econ or finance is cool. Like I've been a loser forever. Nobody thinks this is cool. But what's amazing about it is it's helped spread a message to a really large audience. And everyone who sees that meme immediately understands what it means.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I've seen a bunch of people reach out to me to say, "Hey, I'm interested in crypto. You know, this whole money stuff, the Fed printing so much money." And I'm like, "You can just say money print to go burr, because
Yeah.
we know that's where you learned that. Like, you
Yeah.
didn't read the Fed minutes, and kind of, I didn't either. But yeah, that's a really interesting way to put it. I hadn't thought of it in that macro.
Well, but what I think again is so interesting, and you see this across a number of areas, right? Like I don't want to comment on topics outside of Bitcoin, which is my focus area, but as we look at what's happening in this country and around the world, I think because we're living through a completely mismanaged global crisis, wrapped inside of a pandemic, wrapped inside of a financial crisis, wrapped inside of like the most massive display of boomer incompetence the world has ever seen. Like I have never in my life seen so much incompetence so proudly displayed on the national stage. Like it's so blatantly in your face that it's impossible to look at it and not say, oh my God, nobody knows what they're doing. It's the incompetence is staggering. And I'm not saying I could do better. I'm not running for office. Like who knows? But it is astounding how incompetent people are. So I think people look at that world and they're like, I would like a modicum of competence. I would like some semblance of leadership. And there are two choices. You have voice. So you see people taking to the streets and protesting, or you exit. And for the first time, you can exit a monetary regime through something called Bitcoin. And that, in my view, like the last financial crisis created Bitcoin. The second financial crisis is going to help firmly cement Bitcoin's sort of narrative. And I think the next financial crisis is going to ostensibly fuel a shift away from hopefully, central banking and fiat currencies. But we'll see. Who knows?
Who knows? Well, I think when Bitcoin becomes the official currency of Mars and everyone decides to just move there, that's going to make it's natural progression that it happens.
I mean, we got Tony Stark, aka Elon Musk. He's working on it.
Totally. And you know that Bitcoin is going to be natively supported on Starlink. This is like my 10-year-old self is listening to me right now being like, what are you talking about? Why are there no video games? Anyway, you get to represent Bitcoin on the Boomer Box, aka television sometimes, and you talk to these presenters, and they're people that talk about the financial world to a huge audience. We know what they say on camera, but what do they say off camera? Do they have other questions for you? Are their views any different?
Yeah, I don't think so. Look, I think for most people, particularly if you're in the media or you're in a role where it's all about moving where the momentum is, there are going to be certain periods of time where the momentum is firmly on Bitcoins, typically when there's price action. Let's be candid, like that's their job, what was the other line? If it bleeds, it leads.
Yeah.
So anytime there's like drama or scandal, like they want to talk about that. So look, I think the relationship that media has with Bitcoin is an interesting one. I generally think one trend I'm very excited about, and I'm trying to help fuel this trend, but I'm not doing it as well as some other influencers and people who I think have done a great job, is I think the more that we can shift away from needing massive media platforms to interpret and disseminate the message they want, I think taking ownership of the channel and driving the message and owning the audience is so important. It's actually something we talk about a lot internally at CoinShares is, do we want to wait for the media to write a narrative? Or do we want to write our own narrative? And then do we want to wait for the media to distribute it? or do we want to build our own distribution? I think generally like that conversation's been going on for ages now, but I think it's starting to accelerate, particularly, you know, with the advent of, you know, this next era of media. Who knows what that looks like? But I certainly think there's a lot of room in the Bitcoin community. Like there's a huge captive audience that advertisers are just now realizing is crypto Twitter. Like the crypto community is super powerful, and we can't underestimate how strong the global crypto army is, right? Like there's so many people who are so vocal and so engaged online. They're an amazing audience. You see it on crypto Twitter with how fast memes spread. I've seen it with companies who market to crypto Twitter, who launch product, who've bootstrapped from zero to hero, all off social and earned sort of crypto media and crypto exposure. There's such a vibrant ecosystem, and we don't have to get attention through mass media anymore. Sure, it's helpful in amplifying certain messages and bringing new people in, but the crypto community is pretty big, it's pretty engaged, it's pretty noisy. And so you know, I think mass media starts to become less and less relevant. We saw this with everyone's responses to the Goldman report, the Goldman Wealth Management report and subsequent conference call. Like crypto has kind of its own thing going on. And so I'm excited to see the crypto community really lean into that power and take more ownership of that.
Yeah, I think that's a good, it's, if you're waiting for sort of everyone else to come along, you're not good. I like to equate everything to like a John Hughes movie, and it's like the nerds building their own culture, and everybody eventually realizes that the jocks are no fun, and they go and everyone joins the nerd party instead. So I think that's probably a better way to think about it.
Yeah, and look, like the thing I sort of learned throughout my career is like, I'm not getting invited to tables. I'm making my own table, I'm bringing my own chair, and then I'm putting up other chairs and telling people like, come sit at my table. That's what Crypto Springs was all about. It's like, hey, you see the same 10 people at every crypto conference, like let's create room for new voices and new people, and let's not have it be about who can shout the loudest or like be the most ridiculous, but let's just highlight really interesting, really profound work people are doing and create space. Like make your own table, invite your own guests, and then pull other people in with you. I think that's what's so great about crypto is like we're all a bunch of crazy, weird people, but I do think there's a real spirit and like a real sense of community in some parts of the crypto space. The whole Wall Street thing's like starting to creep me out a little bit.
What's the whole Wall Street thing that's starting to creep you out?
It's just so, it's so funny to me that the way, so this goes back to narratives, right? The way we talk about Bitcoin, like Bitcoin's a systemic hedge, like Bitcoin is removing yourself from the system. Yet the news we're the most excited about is validation from the system, right? So there's this interesting sort of tension where I think there are a lot of people who are financially motivated by the success of Bitcoin, and I think to a certain degree we all are. That's just human nature. But like it gets to a point where sometimes you start to ask yourself, like, what is the point? And sometimes it feels like that balance tips too far in either direction. Yeah, I thought it was funny that like the biggest thing that happened to Bitcoin so far this year, probably more eventful than the halving, was like the whole Paul Tudor Jones thing, and like everyone lost their minds, and I'm like, he's a guy, like,
Yeah.
okay.
Also, how everyone immediately was like, oh, Paul Tudor Jones, can you imagine? It's like, you did not know who he was. I didn't know who he was. You did not know who he was. Quit pretending like you, well, you may, but most people on crypto Twitter who are like, it's like not everybody has a calendar of hedge fund managers on their wall that they watch all the time. So, yeah.
But I think actually like what Paul Tudor Jones is more known for is his charitable, I knew him primarily through the context of the Robin Hood Foundation, which is the charitable giving organization that he set up in New York. It's like a big part of the New York social scene. Like they throw a great gala every year. I knew him through his philanthropic activities, less so on the hedge fund side. I think people talk more about him in the context of the Robin Hood Foundation. So yes, it's interesting. I get it. I totally get it. I completely understand why, Paul Tudor Jones talking about Bitcoin normalizes it for other funds and fund managers, which is great. But there are better things to be excited about.
Being excited about things. My wife very much wants Crypto Springs to happen because our kids are old enough now that we could go sit by the pool for 3 days without them. So what does the future look like with a pandemic world for Crypto Springs?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So our organizing team is 6 people. So it's myself, Elizabeth Stark, and Desiree Dickerson at Lightning Labs, Nellie Mensa, who runs the SF BitDevs meetup, Stacy Herbert from the Kaiser Report, and Amanda Fabiano, who is at Fidelity and leads Fidelity's mining efforts. So we have a great group of the 6 of us. A lot of work goes into planning and organizing it. We decided in March that we were not going to have a Crypto Springs this year, given everything that was going on with COVID. I think in hindsight, that was the right call. I think we're actively looking at what we want to do in 2021. We definitely all love the event. Every year it's around 250 people. Palm Springs is great. The Ace Hotel is always really helpful to us, and they do a great job. Our sponsors are amazing. Big shout out to Blockfolio, who's been our title sponsor 2 years in a row. Ed and his team really go above and beyond. They're super supportive. We're gonna wait and see. I think we'll try to maybe do it in early 2021, but it's definitely gonna continue in some way, shape, or form. I think so much of it is just dependent on how we can safely bring people together and also do it in a cost-efficient way. We end up subsidizing a lot of the event through sponsorships. So we really want to keep it affordable and accessible. So we have some thinking to do on that. But I think 2021 might be our year, unless, who knows? I expect the aliens might land. Here could throw at us. We've got pandemic, we've got market crisis. Who knows? Maybe it'll become a day trader conference instead.
Yeah. Pivot to Robinhood. Everybody's doing it. That's the way to go right now. Absolutely. Meltem, this is super fun. I really, really appreciate you lending your time, lending your expertise to this event. I think the people that are new to crypto through this event and getting into business are going to get a lot from your Q&A. Thursday, I think we've got you. So really, really appreciate that. But thank you. Thank you for being a part of this.
Yeah. And if I may, I'll just quickly say to everyone who's watching, I'm on Twitter at melt_dem. I have open DMs. Feel free to shoot me a note. Our website is www.coinshares.com. Check us out. Always, interested in chatting with people, meeting people. And yeah, just really excited that you put this together, Graham. And thanks so much for making time for me on the schedule.
Not a problem at all. Thank you so much.
Thanks.